Roy is about a half hour north of Salt Lake. So
Okay.
same metro area, but out in the suburbs.
Okay. Utah is one state I have not been to.
Oh, you gotta do it. There's so much beautiful nature. If you like nature, oh my goodness, such variety.
Yeah. So my wife's been out there and she's hiked a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm a big college football fan. Arkansas is my team, and they play Utah in the fall of
Hey,
this year.
you
So
gotta come.
I think we're gonna try to do like a long trip where she gets to take us on some hikes and then I get to
Yeah,
take her to watch the game. So we're trying to figure that out.
that'll be a good one.
I got to get out there. But no, Zach, man, thank you so much for coming on the pod today, and I'm
My
excited to
pleasure.
talk with you and your work. And um, man, so I'm not familiar. I wanted to kind of kick this off because I'm not familiar with this. I haven't had a writer on that's been a part of this. But talking about the is it a competition you were in?
Yeah. So it's both a competition and the one of the prizes is publication in the anthology. So it's a little bit of both. It's a book and a competition.
Yeah, and it's called Writers of the Future, right?
That's correct. Yes.
So break it down on what it is, how you get your name and work in to be considered and just what it is, because I've never heard of it before.
Sure. So Writers of the Future is probably the largest competition for speculative fiction amateurs, people just breaking in. So sci-fi, fantasy, and some horror as well. It's been around. This is the second year for quite a while, started by L. Ron Hubbard. And, when I was first finding out about it, everyone would mention this contest. And, contests, there's always a chance that there's something sketchy going on, right? Like where are the incentives for the people running this? But this is a marvelous contest. There's no entry fee. All the submissions are judged completely blind. They don't know your name, your age, your demographic, anything. It's just purely on skill. Some people compare it to like the American Idol of writing fiction, right? So they get thousands of entrants. They do 4 quarters, and then yearly culmination of that is coming up in a couple weeks here in April. So I started entering just off and on quite a while ago, probably 10 years ago. Had a couple of great mentors who said, you've got to do the contest. They pay you for your work. It gets in a great anthology. And then the real prize is that, well, for me, the real prize, they give you a nice trophy, and cash is always nice, but they publish you in the anthology, and then you get to go to this wonderful writing workshop. So I'll go spend a week out in Hollywood, and they just have some really fantastic professional writers come kind of give you the keys of the kingdom and teach you all the things you need to know to be a professional in this space instead of an aspiring professional. So
Yeah.
so that's the bare bones of it.
Yeah. So you said you've been submitting your work to them for 10 years.
Sure, yeah.
So are you submitting like an entire book or like a short
Yeah, great
story
question.
version?
So this is for short stories. There's no, you can be as short as you want. If you can make a story in 2 words, I guess you could enter it. On the long side, I think it's up to 17,000 words.
Okay.
So the story that I'll have in the anthology is one of the longer ones. It's about 13,000. So it's a novelette, I think officially is the term. So
And
you'd be
and this is
talking,
this is Shell Game, right?
yeah, this is Shell Game.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So short fiction. And honestly, most of what I write is longer fiction. So for me, the contest was a great kind of measuring stick. Whenever I had an idea that would be better suited to a shorter story, I would get it in the best shape I could, send it off, and they're marvelous to give kind of the honorable mentions and silver honorable mentions, and just this kind of light in the darkness of, hey, you're on the right path, right? As you get better as a writer and learn your craft. So as a writer, I've completed a bunch of novels that no one wanted to read, and a bunch of short stories that these guys would read, which was great. And it's been a wonderful source of kind of encouragement along the way. But yeah, short story venue. And I think in this anthology, page count and word count are a little different, but you've got some that might be as short as 20 or 30 pages. And then some of the longer ones like mine are more like 70 or 80.
Yeah. Very cool. Yeah, I was looking as I was researching it more, and I saw like how they broke it down into quarterly awards and different tiers and stuff like that. I mean, obviously, it's a big deal, and that's why I was asking so many questions because I'm just now really dabbling into like the fantasy sci-fi space as I've interviewed more authors who have written books under that theme or genre. I'm learning so much because it's such a huge space. There's so many big time writers in it, and I have a lot of friends when I was growing up that loved that style of book. So I'm kind of late to the game, but when I saw your stuff come through and I was reading through it, I was like, dang, this is a pretty big deal.
It's really fun. And we're at a cool moment in just like pop culture where, you know, the movies have been all about sci-fi and fantasy for years. I mean, I remember the first movie I saw in theaters, I'm old, but was Star Wars Return of the Jedi. I was like, oh, it's the coolest thing ever. So we've been going to movies for years and loving these, you know, sci-fi fantasy stories. Every superhero story is a fantasy story, but it's really reaching popular culture, I think, just recently that, you know, one of the big new movies, the Project Hail Mary, is just a
Yeah.
hardcore sci-fi book with more math than you can imagine, and yet
Yep.
it's great, right? It's I haven't seen the movie, but the book is great, and I think people are ready to read about the stuff we've enjoyed watching for a long time, which is
Yeah.
very cool.
Yeah. No, it's something that gets your brain thinking, and I kinda talk about this with people too, and I think the reason I'm getting more interested in it is probably due to some of, like, the technology and AI and all this stuff that's, I don't know, maybe 20, 30 years ago was more of a fantasy type thing, and now,
Right.
like, it's almost more reality, and I'm kind of accepting conceptually, like, what's possible, and this stuff's not so far-fetched to me anymore. I don't know how you feel about that, but some of this to me, it, like, resonates a little bit easier, so that's why I'm more interested in it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, sometimes it's easier to see the truth when you look at it from an angle,
Mhm.
right? Like you approach things through a parable or through a what if, and you suddenly see aspects of it that weren't so obvious when you look straight on. I actually have another story getting published in May, June in Analog magazine that's about AI. Like my one in this book, it's more of a thriller and a mystery, but dealing with some of these, like, I think we all have big questions, like, how does this actually fit into our life? And who are we in this age where there's a machine that knows more than we do and
Yeah,
knows so much about us? Anyway, it makes it makes all of us think, what if?
yeah.
And it's really pressing at the moment. What if this happens? And what if the
Y
other?
yeah. I'm having I totally we're going off topic a little bit here, but I've had tons of conversations around that recently as I'm in the technology space, primarily from a recruiting standpoint, but noticing how people aren't needed as much, and we've gone down rabbit holes of like, okay, if people aren't needed as much, like they still have to live,
Yeah.
and be productive at something. Like, how do you supplement not having normal income or, contributing in a certain way? And there's all these things you can go really deep into. Um, and it's kind of freaky, man.
Yeah, and well, I have my own kids are in college, some of them, some still at home. I have 4 kids. And then I'm a teacher as well, so it's like what part of what we're doing in education still applies no matter what? Like, what's the uniquely human element that I bring that's of value to my workplace or to my career field? And what is it that the machine's going to do better? And do we care? There's this thing rattling around in my head that I'll talk to my students about because I'm a band director, middle school band director, and
Okay.
I'll talk
Yeah.
to them. You know, they have a thing called a pitching machine, right? The pitching machine can pitch faster and better than any human.
Yeah.
So why don't we use it in games?
Yeah.
Because nobody cares to see a machine pitch, right? We want to see what humans can do. But we
Yeah.
do use it for training. So how does this work with AI when AI can write a book or a song, or like, what do we still care about being uniquely human? And what are we okay to turn over to the machines? I don't have the answer, but that's a really interesting question to poke at, right?
Yeah.
What does this look like for our kids when they're growing up in this time period where this machine can do most things better than you? So how do you
Yeah.
add value and how do you be a person that is happy that you're growing?
Yeah.
They're hard questions.
Yeah. No, and I think that's the big question is, yeah, where's your purpose lie,
Yeah,
and what do you want to do, and how can you make a difference to where waking up every day you've got something to go work on and do. And it's a very I didn't think I would think about it as much as I do, like 5, 6 years ago. It's not something that really crossed
yeah,
my mind, but every day there's something about that gets going faster and faster with it. And it sounds like you incorporate some of that, like, with your thoughts into your writing, which is really
absolutely.
cool too.
I think even if you don't mean to, writing tends to reveal what's on your mind, right? So Shell Game is kind of a noir detective story, but it's really all about if someone else could take your place, right? And if you can't trust the face looking at you, which they're very AI kind of ideas,
Mhm.
but through a different lens. How do you deal with that, and how do you negotiate with something that you have no power over? So yeah, in a kind of sideways way, it's not a dissimilar story.
Yeah. Have you always been, and I'm going back, Zach, to like you growing up, or young
Sure.
professional, like have you written your whole life? Have you always been interested in writing, or when did that kind of become something you started to really take seriously?
Yeah, so I was a bookworm as a kid. I mean, I grew up with like this greatest gift of parents who both read. and
Yeah.
I thought that was normal. Like we had books around the house, and my dad is also a hardcore athletic hunter fisher. He was a karate instructor for all my growing up, so I did that. But he also just read. Like that's what he did
Yeah.
to wind down, is pick up a novel and read. And so that's always been around. And I think in the back of my mind, I didn't realize it was there, but I remember having this kind of heated argument with a friend in karate class. Like he was sure that there was no one in the world who made a living as a writer except Stephen King. And I'm like, that can't be true. There's got to be other people. He's like, no, he's the only one. So I think it was in the back of my mind. But and I think, just looking a little at your story, mine might resonate a bit. I loved reading, but you get into college and early career and that like where's the time? And so
Yeah.
I really had stopped reading for pleasure or even for like on my own self-improvement, which is a
Yeah.
big thing too. Like if it was assigned for something, I read it, but otherwise like my brain felt fried.
Yeah.
And then I was doing my graduate degree in music at the University of Utah. So, look out when you come to play them in football next year. But I'd been doing so much writing and so much reading that I really kind of rediscovered how much I enjoyed
Yeah.
just words and these logic problems and thought experiments. And my master's thesis actually went on to get that published as a nonfiction book about jazz education, which was great. But when I finished, I was like, I love writing, but I think I've said what I want to say in this space. I want to explore things that are a little more creative and more speculative, the sci-fi and fantasy. So uh, I read a few books at that point too that kind of reignited a love for reading. And one it's so different from anything really that I write, but it's called Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison. And you think Invisible Man, you think like the superhero, but it's not. It's a really deep and emotional exploration of what it was to be Black in the United States
Mm.
and being invisible. He tells it through just beautiful language and fantastical scenarios that we know couldn't actually happen, but they reveal something really powerful. I was really touched by it. It helped me see people in a different light than I had seen them, and it just made me reconnect. And I think there was a bit of a outside influence there, helping me feel like this is a space where you ought to say something, and
Yeah.
not like he did, because that's such a unique and powerful
Yeah.
book. But yeah, and it was the same time that all my students were walking around with Harry Potter books, and I'm like, well,
Yeah.
what's that? And so I picked those up and read it. So a lot of things came together at that time to kind of light the fire in me that this is a path you ought to be pursuing and
Yeah.
directing some of your attention to.
No, that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, I've talked to a lot of people and I know like there's cycles in life that kind of maybe allow you to read more than others and kind of
Yeah,
rediscover that. And so um it's cool to talk with people who are at different stages, but it's also cool because you kind of mentioned your nonfiction writing, music focused,
yeah,
and then fiction writing with fantasy, sci-fi. I was actually talking to an author, I guess it was last week, and we were talking about genre. He was like, "I don't really believe in genre. Like, I believe in
sure.
theme because
Yeah.
I wanna write what I wanna write. I don't really wanna be pigeonholed into a genre, even though it's kinda how things get categorized and, you kind of almost have to be in something." But it sounds like you kind of have a similar approach where you just write what you're interested in, and maybe that is falling in line with the genre of this, but it's more of just the theme you're creating with your stories.
Well, I tell you, there's every genre has like its own, it's like a sport. Every sport has its own rules, and you can be a great athlete in one sport, and some of that carries over and some of it doesn't. So
Yeah.
you have to learn the rules of the game. Like sci-fi has its own conventions, and there are people who will call you to task if you don't do it right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Just like if you write about guns and you get the guns wrong, you are going to hear about it from our friends who love guns because they're passionate about that part of it. So you have to learn the conventions. But I think what's worked best for me is that I'm interested in a lot of things. And so you take ideas from outside that genre and bring them in. In Shell Game, it's so weird. And I tell this to the fantasy people and they just give me a weird look. But a big part of that idea came from the world of value investing, which is just another area that I'm really passionate about. And I think there's some great thinkers in that space. Charlie Munger had so many good things to say just about thinking clearly and about being a responsible steward of the things you're involved in. Anyway, one of the stories he liked to tell was about a fellow billionaire friend of his who made his entire fortune investing in a single square mile. We think of people investing overseas in lots of places, and that just got me thinking, what would that be in this speculative lens you have someone that's not investing necessarily to make money, but they have these abilities, this power to assume someone else's identity theft. It's like a
Mhm.
literal interpretation of what my story is about. Why would someone like that choose to be local, like go local, right? Instead of being not go for global dominion, but I'm just going to be in this one small town. What would be the advantages and disadvantages? So anyway, that really small detail from the world of value investing is what makes my story work. And I think most of the best stories out there are like that. It's like combining two different flavors we haven't thought of before or two different ideas, and it helps us see both of them in a new light, gives
Yeah.
us new things to think about.
Yeah. No, that's interesting, man. That's interesting the way you put that. I just love these conversations because it makes my brain think. Which same as reading. Like I love the more I read, the more I crave, for lack of a better term, like intellectual conversation or challenging in the
Yeah,
way I think. And you were talking about like reading a book that made you see people differently. And it's
sure.
so refreshing when you're reading something and you're learning something and you're just changing your lens a little bit, seeing things differently, creating a story out of something that you're reading. I just love hearing people talk about their process on like where their work came from, what idea sparked it, how you spun it into your own story that you've written. I just think it's so fascinating.
Well, I think there's a, as a musician, there's this great little mantra from I think it's from Kirk Whalum, who's this great like soul saxophonist. I play saxophone, so he's a hero of mine. But he says, "As to ASTW, always something to work on." And there's always a way to get better in life. And I think as humans, like we're hungry for that, whether that's intellectually better or physically, or if you're into something like I am, like music, like you never reach a point where you know everything or there's nothing interesting. You might just have to look under a new rock, right? So I was just talking to my kids and they just kind of roll their eyes at me. But summer's coming, and one of the things I love to do in the summer is there's this series called The Great Courses. It's basically a college course online, right? And so you can just dive into anything. And so I love picking a culture I don't know a lot about and just put them in the earphones while I'm doing other things. And a lot of it doesn't stick to my dumb brain, but some things do, and some things are so fascinating that you have to dive in, and you do. I think you understand more about the world and people, and I don't know, not to get too philosophical, but more about yourself too. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
how do I relate to this totally foreign concept? What does it mean to me?
Yeah. Yeah. No, it makes sense. And it kind of leads me to another question for you, Zach, because we're talking about you have so many different interests, and you have a family. And another interest of mine is like how people balance their time with hobbies and things they want to accomplish. And I guess what is your process and how do you organize and find the time to write while having a lot of other responsibilities and interests that you keep up with as well?
Man, I wish I knew the answer to that. I'll tell you with the jazz book, when I was doing that, the way I would do that is every Thursday night would be an all-nighter because
Mhm.
Friday at the time were short days at school. And I knew that I wasn't shortchanging my kids because Fridays we basically we play through all our music, end of the week, kind of fun. This is what we worked on all week. And so I would stay up all night Thursday typing away and get up and go to work Friday. And I don't have that much bandwidth anymore. But it is the constant challenge. I want to do a good job for my employer. Every once in a while, I'll have people say, "Well, so you write at work?" And I'm like, "There's no way. Like, there's so much. If you want to do an honorable job at anything, if you want to do justice to the kids that walk through the door, that's a full time job plus a lot. And so it's evenings and weekends. And I have the great blessing of summer. My wife is so supportive that many teachers have a regular summer job, and I do freelance as a musician, but that's some nights here and there and weekends that it's not as busy as I ever wish it would be, but
Yeah.
there's that. But mostly she's been on board supporting me that, this is, yeah, I guess it's a hobby, but it's not. It's preparing for a job as a creator. And
Yeah.
so summers and vacation days and weekends, again, then it's also the balance of don't ignore the family and close the laptop and devote real attention to them. But when I'm behind the computer trying to turn off the distractions of the world and be focused for a small amount of time instead of trying to be two places at once. And so I guess if I have any insight to that, it's mostly about learning to compartmentalize so that when I'm with my students or I'm with my family, they get all of me and not part of me. And the same when I'm trying to be a musician or trying to be a writer, that
Yeah.
that this is getting real effort and real attention. And some of it just takes longer, right? If you're going to try to do all those things and do them well, you have to understand that it might be a little longer trip uphill, but you can still make progress.
Yeah. Well, and I can hear the intentionality in the way you talk about your writing. So it's fun, you enjoy it, but you have a purpose and long-term vision and goal that it sounds like you're wanting to get to with it. To can you
Absolutely.
continue growing as you continue to write and do bigger and bigger things. And yeah, maybe it becomes something to where you are a full-time author, and able
Sure.
to put your stories out and have a lot more time to focus on your writing would be the goal, and so that's pretty cool. Now that we've met, it's something I'm gonna be rooting for. for you, and
Oh,
so
thank you.
yeah, it'll be really cool when that day comes, and so no doubt it will. But
For sure.
with your you keep mentioning your music too. Are you in a band?
Well, I'm in a number of, like, local bands, and these are not, like, pop bands. These be mostly jazz, and so
Tag you in when needed?
I'm in 4 different groups that play around, and there are a lot of folks who are higher on the list than me, but every once in a while I get called to go play with the Utah Symphony or some other really, really fine organization. So that's great. It's a little money, and it really is challenging, if you get those calls to go do a recording session or a symphony thing. It's like, okay, now I need to shift my focus a little bit for a bit
Yeah,
and make sure that I'm bringing my A game. But yeah, that's a ton of fun. One of the nice differences, in my teaching and my music, you do the thing, you teach the kids, you play the gig, and then it's over. Like there's no artifact, there's no permanent thing, which is beautiful in a way. But the great thing about writing is you finish for a day and there's words on a page, there's papers in a stack, like it's still there tomorrow, as
yeah,
opposed to the kids that walk out the door at the end of the year and go on to their own, wonderful things. So it's nice to have that balance. I love the in the moment aspect of teaching and music, and also the more permanent, accumulative process of writing something or even composing music, which I do as well.
yeah. No, that's awesome, man. I just love you have a lot of creativity to you. The music and writing, there seems to be a lot of correlation to just your interest and the way your brain works and just being able to express yourself in different ways. And I talk to a lot of people, they write, but I haven't heard too many that have things outside of that they're interested in doing as well. And I think it's so important to have different interests and have things that are not, I don't know, just things you can do for enjoyment outside
Yeah,
of just what you're trying to do, from a writing standpoint. You got to have a balance there that keeps you a little loose, I guess, to say, and not so serious all the time.
sure. And I have this is a kind of a random tangent, but one of kind of a local hero of mine is a guy named Don Aslett who passed away a few years ago. My wife knew him growing up. We're both from small town Idaho. Don started a cleaning company, a custodial company in college, and then took it to a multi-million-dollar company. And he also wrote like 50 books and was like a speaker and did all these crazy things. And so he has this little book he wrote. He probably wrote it like in 2 weeks, but he talks about time management. And it's gold, and I wish I knew the title of it. I'll have to get it to you. But he just talks about the way he procrastinates is he jumps to another project. Like he can tell when his interest is starting to wane and he's not as productive. And so then he just jumps to something else he found interesting. And for me, I'm not like ADHD. That's not me. I'm a guy who likes to deeply focus. But the ability to kind of know yourself and know, okay, in the morning, my brain is ready to do this, but in the afternoon, I need to jump to this because then like exercise or working in the yard, that's afternoons for me because my brain is a little fried, but I still have, the physical energy to go. And then my brain can just work on problems. Anyway, that idea that it's okay to have different interests, you just know how to manage your own personal psychology to make those work for your life. That was really helpful for me. And I'm still figuring it out for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
But
But it
yeah,
goes back to you talking about just compartmentalizing and being able to
yeah,
balance and do things at certain times, and so that all makes sense. No, well, Zach, I got one more question for you, and I think this one may be a tough one. If you listen to the episodes, I ask this to everybody because I'm always curious what people are reading and where their interest lies. And it sounds like you have interest in reading books outside of the type of style that you
sure.
write too. But what are a few books that have meant a lot to you personally or professionally, and I guess what are some books that you would recommend to others right now that you've been really into?
Yeah, it's such a great question. And I've got to say, this is a separate. It's not a compartment because it's also everything. But for me, I don't let a day go by without reading from the New Testament and the Book of Mormon. And those are two things that center me and remind me of who I should be and challenge me to be that guy. But, beyond that and the more day-to-day things, I'm currently rereading a great book you're probably familiar with, The Psychology of Money, Morgan Housel, which
Yeah.
is like just marvelous about money, but also just like about our own biases and how we think the world works. I love his line, "Nobody's crazy." Like everybody has a reason for what they're doing, and that's very much an author's mindset, right? Like what makes this person in this system tick. Another one, I just have to say this for the teenagers in my house because they will roll their eyes at me so hard because I talk about it all the time. Genghis Khan and the Making of the Modern World. Just a great history book. Jack Weatherford's the author. I have to check there, but kind of a revisionist history, and he challenges a lot of our assumptions about who these people were and what their influence was. There's so many. Those are two I really like. At the moment, I'm reading a lot of fiction by other authors who are going to be at this this workshop. So some of my fellow entrants who are new, but also Orson Scott Card, who wrote Ender's Game, has a great story in there. I just finished his this morning, and he's always so thoughtful and challenging and making you like really challenge your assumptions about what it means to be a person, right?
Yeah.
And Tim Powers also was new to me before I started getting into the contest, but Tim has some really great short fiction. So yeah, just lots of
Yeah.
stuff. I'm the guy that has 5 books around the house, and I'm like reading all of
Yeah.
them.
No, that's great. It actually leads me to one more question for you, but the psychology of money, that I'm glad you mentioned that. I'm a part of a leadership group, and we actually started reading that a few months ago. And I love like financial type books and money mindset books and investing, like all of that. I'm
Yeah,
extremely interested in right now. I have a lot of group texts with friends where we talk about things, which I think is a good thing, like being able to sharpen each other up. It's
absolutely.
never been more important to, like, figure out how to be financially educated
Yep.
and, create your own strategy and all that, so I love that. But I was gonna ask you my last question for you, just 'cause as you were talking about reading some of your fellow peers, do you like, everyone who's in this contest, do you guys lean on each other and share your stories with each other to kind of get an opinion or see what their thoughts are? Do you have a group of people in your inner circle that you say, "Hey, I'm writing this. Can you tell me what you think?"
That's a great question. And I will say not yet with that group of people. I do have a writing group that I'm a part of, and that's really helpful. Every week we'll post something, everyone reads it, and then, in the most loving way possible, you tear it apart and say, this isn't working. Try.
Yeah.
That's been very helpful. It's amazing how writing forces you to think more clearly. And just like you talked about your group, like expressing your opinion to someone else makes you examine your opinion more deeply. That's been very helpful. That's one of the things I'm looking forward to about the conference and this week-long workshop is having that exact same experience with other people. And they say it's very common that out of this group of people, you'll, pick up a few more like-minded people to share your stuff with. And I anticipate that probably will happen, but, who knows? Everyone might hate my stuff and say, we don't want to
Yeah.
be in your group, Poulter, but
Yeah, yeah.
no,
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 it's
that's
interesting.
absolutely networking. Sometimes it sounds like a sleazy word, like you're taking advantage of people, but in the best case, it's finding ways to help each other. And I
Yeah,
think that really is what the contest is all about. So
yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, it seems to have, like, a positive aspect to it to where that's a big part of it. So that's kinda where I was thinking about that is how do contestants maybe lean on each other, and maybe it's
Right.
post-competition where you get to know people and you kind of create your connection and networking
Yeah.
group that you trust and learn from.
I will say, I did not take advantage of this, but for anyone listening who might be interested in the contest, there is a very active forum hosted by the contest. And so there are a lot of people on there who will trade first pages. And I wasn't part of that particular group, but there's a very active group of people who are doing exactly that specifically for this contest.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, Zach, where can people find your work at? I know Shell Game, I think, comes out in April, right?
Yep. Next month, part of the Writers of the Future Volume 42 anthology. Shell Game will be in there. I also have another novelette coming out in Analog Magazine in the May June episode, and that's the one that's deals more overtly with AI. We open up with a main character driving a sentient car, and there's a body in the trunk, and you'll have to read the rest to find out.
Say no
And then,
more.
yeah, zachpoulter.com. That's the website, and
Cool.
hopefully many more things coming. I am blessed to have a really great agent. We're shopping around my first novel, so more in store coming up.
Awesome. Yeah, and I'll make sure your website's in the show notes so everyone can come find you and follow your work. And so, man, Zach, this is awesome, man. Thank you so much for coming on and just talking about your work and the progression you're going through and can't wait to see all of the work that you put out there in the coming months and years. And so, man, I'm excited for you and thank you again for coming on the Books for Guys podcast.
Thanks so much, Chris. It was a blast.